So without further delay, allow me to invite His Excellency Ambassador Denis Antoine. He will be focusing and enlightening on the area of COVID-19, the global pandemic, and of course emphasizing the participation of youth in the promotion of SDGs. Without further delay, Ambassador, the floor is yours now.
Let me thank you, moderator, and to extend my congratulations to all the illustrious speakers that went before me. I particularly want to thank the organizer, Dr. Okika, and to clearly indicate that this occasion is a celebration of the significance of our youth. Now, there has been a surge of negative and positive emotions brought about by the pandemic in the global community. Now, if taken at its height, can lead to a restored world with greater fortune for all. If this opportunity is lost to reclaim humanity and human dignity, our world will be filled with more misery. We are now living in an interconnected and interdependent world, which demands that we take full advantage of this moment for collective response to reach global consensus or lose it all. So let this rising tide lift all to a higher level of humanity. In doing so, I believe our children would more readily and should be more readily included in the process. I have often wondered when children make their contribution to our world. I am constantly mindful of how much, as an adult, I have learned from my children. I have watched with interest the way children solve adult problems with pure thought processing and without inhibition. I have recalled my daughter and my son devouring math equations that I am still wondering how to solve. I have a nephew whom I admire because of his tremendously advanced capacity in solving mental limitless equation, limitless length. But the question that's always asked of our children, what do you want to do when you grow up? Could you imagine that? What do you want to do when you grow up? Our children are not the future. They are now. Therefore, they must be engaged now. The SDGs that we have embraced has been formulated in 2015. And we're talking about the future. That's the past, you know. The SDGs have been designed now. It is because the future begins. The future is upon us. The question is, we have visualized the future. Therefore, to realize it, collective, inclusive engagement is on now. We need intergenerational exchanges to ensure restoration. As the generational gaps shifts. Now, the most beautiful observation of children or youth is how imaginative they are. Therefore, a journey into the future with the adults of the future who are now children is a most fascinating and reassuring voyage to realize that our children gets it. They get it. Just as adults now got it. But let me ask you this question. Don't you wonder if adults did get it when we look at how things are today? Now, passing it on, that is life's relay, does not have an exchange zone when one generation passes it on to the other. That's why I am promoting intergenerational engagement. Now, we are in a storm. Collective responsibility is required. All stakeholders must be prepared. Educators need to be re-educating to teach new approaches to teachers. And we have to reach students and parents as partners. Our societies are being restored. Therefore, changes existing in institutional infrastructure must shift from traditional methods. All right, quality education delivery has to be progressive and transformative, equitable, affordable, and accessible. These requirements are addressed in the SDGs. At the beginning of the 21st century, we talked a lot about connectivity. Today, there is still deep inequity in urban and unserved rural areas. Too many young people do not have access to the bandwidth needed for effective communication in the less affluent areas where large clusters of youth are living. All institutional, social, and traditional barriers must be removed to include youth in the development process. Intergenerational engagement has been spoken of earlier. Students need more adults who are active in their lives, not to preach, but to reach them and listen. Youths have to be able to connect to seniors with whom they would feel comfortable approaching if there were problems. In an era of COVID-19, however, we are compelled to realize that we are all learners. I would like to propose that youth, that's young people, begin to identify the ways in which youth can make a difference now. We need to hear from them what they consider to be their area of major advantage. Instead of speaking of them as about the future, youths around the world could make a credible difference in addressing the crises at home where they are and reaching out to others in the diaspora through social media to share ideas of how they are making a difference where they are. We are in a difficult period for school districts. Partnerships are needed for social and emotional support. And a lot is being said. We need support for food security. We need to ease anxiety. There are youths in the streets protesting in countries. How do youths feel in countries where they can't protest? Youths are speaking to youths on specific topics of common interest offering solutions to each other, and to help raise awareness about how they are coping with the COVID-19 crisis. Now, youths must be given opportunities to participate in transforming the communities and the environment. With the right tools and programs, literacy alone is not enough anymore. Definitely not enough among our youths. In this global fight against the pandemic, proper tools, knowledge, skills, and environment must be at the disposal of young people, and they must be encouraged to take an active role in offering practical solutions to their various communities. Young people must be empowered to take action to ensure that the COVID-19 disease is contained in their communities. Power sources. Now, youths, our population of youth is a valuable power source that must be tapped into by our respective communities. Global electrification and distribution of this power must come from engaging our youths as navigators to make constructive conveyance in the midst of this pandemic. Youths are encouraged to represent their interest in the fight against this disease. Becoming involved now is taking hold of the future. Youths are reminded that they are not the future, posterity is. Our youth are now. In this crisis, when there is a manifestation of confusing good and evil, the fresh eyes and voices of young people can bring welcome change. And I emphasize that youths are the guarantors of the future that is envisioned in the 2030 agenda. So start defining that future as you are in it. The future is every tick of the clock. So I do hope that, as the distinguished convener of this event, Dr. Ada always say, youth is not the future. Posterity is. Youth is now. Let us become engaged. Let us take the journey. Let the youth see. Let us visualize with our youth what the future can be so we can realize it. I thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency, for your powerful speech and, of course, to giving a way forward to putting things more into implementation and into the global action side. Thank you so much, His Excellency, for your great words and, of course, supporting the great youth. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward to our another esteemed speaker for this session. I would like to invite Mr. Bill Graham. He is the Vice Chair, NGO Committee for Education, Learning and Literacy at the United Nations. Mr. Graham will going to focus onto the area of a promotion at the national level. Without further delay, Mr. Bill, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. I have to say here, right off the start, I'm blown away by the speakers that have come before me today. We have talked about here how can we empower youth? How can we enable youth to go and build the future that they're going to need? And I get the impression here from the speakers. I'm hoping here I will be able to have contact with every one of the speakers that's gone before me, and that we can come together, because jointly together, I believe we can really mobilize incredible numbers of youth. Very quickly here, I am a member of Rotary, in addition to my role in education and other ventures. And in Rotary here, our motto is a service above self. And I happen to be the president of a club called the Dare to Be Great E-Club. And our motto really gets into creating extraordinary opportunities for young people to do more with their lives than they or their parents or teachers ever dreamed possible. And what that really is about is figuring out, how do we get them to believe that they can change the world? Because once they believe they can change the world, then we can go out and help them with the skills and the guidance to actually enable them to go and do it. I'd like to relay a brief story here of an example, because almost everything I say in terms of sayings come from young people themselves. Perhaps before that, I would like to just show something here. If you can see this, SDGs now, Dare to Be Great. And the rest of it here is member of Vision Africa 2030. And what that is about here is we are looking to mobilize a large number. This happens to be from our group of young people in Africa. And the idea is to mobilize a large number of young people in Africa to become members of the team that is making Vision Africa 2030 a reality. I have a quote for 50 million of these. That is the dimensions we have to be talking about if we want to see real change take place. It doesn't help us to go out there and help 5% or 2% of the population do something. Because what we're really needing in the world, when we talk education, we don't need to educate the 2%, we need to educate the 100%. And educating 100%, they are the ones learning. Educators have learned. It's not about what the teacher says in the front of the classroom that counts anymore. It's what the students do in the learning process. It's what they bring into their heads, not what the teachers spewed out of their mouths. So the key thing here is we are looking to, how do we empower the current round of young people who are ready to be empowered to go and mobilize the rest of the youth around the world. Now, I was fortunate here to be able to take a few years off a while back, and I traveled around the US. I've lived in 3 continents, but I traveled around the US speaking to educators, the better part of 1,000 educators, and an untold number of students, trying to find out what was going on with education in the US. And in doing that here, I found amazing ideas, especially from the students. They had incredible ideas how they could have great impact in their lives, and the lives around them. And so we started to identify here some young people that were mentioned that were redefining the definition of impossible. For example, an 8-year-old girl who heard about child slaves, so she went out and raised some money, 8 years old, and bought the freedom of 500 child slaves. Another case here of a 10-year-old girl who saw the victims of Katrina on TV and said, we have to do something, got a bunch of 10-year-old friends together and said, we're going to raise $1 million for the victims of Katrina. Everybody laughed at them and they said, no, we're really going to do it. We're going to do it by that date. Well, the date came and went and they didn't raise $1 million. They raised $10 million. And as a result here, they were on TV and they were being honored here for what they accomplished. And their comment was, what's all this fuss about? Any random kid could have done it. You just got to try. To prove her point, she went home, she raised $10 million again. Another girl in Great Britain here, 9 years old, who heard about children dying from hunger every few minutes. She went out and got on a blog and started raising some money. She eventually went and got 10,000 children off the streets in Africa, got them into school, and fed them for an entire year, a 9-year-old girl. So we started going around to schools and challenging young people in schools to disregard what anybody says is impossible and dare to be great. Dare to think about the biggest problems in the world and dare to think, yes, you can have ideas, you can come up and do something about those. In one primary school here, we spoke to a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds, and we left with the challenge, go do something great. And after we left, a couple of weeks later, a group of 5 or 6 of those students went to their principal, their headmaster, and said, we have an idea. We want to do something great. And they said, we want to do something that's going to help our classmates who are weak readers to become better readers. But we also want to do something about those children we've heard in the world that don't go to school at all because they have no food. And they just have to spend their entire day trying to get enough food to live for another day. So their idea was a readathon. And they went and got people to make pledges. For every hour they read, they'd make a small donation. They got 70 classmates to participate. And in a few weeks, they raised enough money that they were able to take 250 of the world's poorest children in the streets of Malawi, Africa, off the streets, get them into school, and feed them for a whole year. That got here a Time 100 Most Influential, a CNN Hero of the Year award winner, a former UN ambassador to all descend on this school and say, you guys are heroes, you're heroes. Then we started getting videos in from school children in Africa, the Middle East, Europe, Latin America, saying, we heard about what you kids did. You've inspired us. We want to do something now. And a couple of weeks later, I was telling this story to some high school students, and they were going, wow, 70 students were able to so dramatically change the lives of 250 students. That's three children changed lives for every one of the participating students. And they said, imagine, and I'm thinking here, they're saying, we could do that too. But they didn't say that. They said, imagine if we could mobilize 70 million children to participate in doing something like that. That's only 5% of the world's student body. So they went out and reached out to students or young people with a video. No marketing on anything, but somehow a lot of people saw it, and they got young people from 40 countries saying, this is great, we want to be part of this. That resulted in them coming to a discussion of, hey, we're a movement now. What's our mission statement about? And they talked about, should it be ending hunger? Should it be ending illiteracy? Should it be ending poverty? There was somebody for every SDG championing every SDG. And then somebody said, you remember the story about give a person a fish, you feed them for a day, but if you teach them the fish, you feed them for a lifetime? And once they thought about that, they said, you're right. More powerful than solving any one problem in the world would be if we could go and grow an entire generation of young master global problem solvers who have the skills and the passion and determination, and above all, the confidence to effectively take on all the world's problems, including the ones we don't even know about yet today. And they set that as their mission. And we've adopted that mission for us ourselves right now. And we're seeing now a growth of a movement out there that is identifying initiatives. All of these initiatives have the same types of goals to mobilize in the millions. Because we can go out there and we can go to a school here and a school there, or a community put water in here, and we can be doing that. There's literally millions of projects like that around the world. But unfortunately, the global aggregate needle is not being moved. The head of the OECD PISA project, the International Assessment of Education, said last year that they've not seen any progress in education worldwide within the last 10 years. And when we look at the millions, the hundreds of millions of kids not getting an adequate education, we have to figure out how do we get them all to have an adequate education. Because if we can't solve the education problem everywhere, we cannot solve the economic inequality problem. And if you can't solve the economic inequality problem, a country with only 1/10 of the per capita income cannot sustainably solve the problems of hunger and poverty, or provision of healthcare, of education, of infrastructure. That requires that there's a skilled labor force that is able to compete effectively on the international stage. And that requires that everyone have the education skills. So we are looking to say, how do we do that? one thing we know for sure, if we do not aim for those goals, we have no chance of achieving them. We can't guarantee we're going to achieve them just because we're shooting at them or we're aiming for them. But if we don't aim for them, we have no chance. So this body of young people that we are putting together, and you'll hear about a little later on in the panel discussion, they have set out that you have to set your goals based on what's needed and not what you think you can do. Because only when you do that and stretch to try to reach those goals you don't know how to do you grow. Think of what former former Nobel Peace Prize winner and former president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, as she said here, you always have to make sure that your goals exceed your current ability to achieve them. So I will stop there with I am really hoping we will have an opportunity here to collaborate. This, Dr. Ada, this is an incredible event you've pulled together here. And if we can come together and share the ideas and say, how do we mobilize? How do we recruit the marketing heads of Nike and Microsoft and these global organizations and go out there and mobilize the youth en masse to make massive changes in the world, then Vision 2030. Vision 63 is good, but Vision 2030 is better. So I thank you for your attention and good luck on the rest of this conference.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dole, for giving us a really good direction. And of course, as you mentioned, of course, so I can say like this world is not about to competing each other. It's about to having a synergize, and of course to holding heads together and work together for the betterment and for the empowerment. Thank you so much, Mr. Bill. Thank you so much for giving us your time. So ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward to our another esteemed speaker who would like to invite Dr. Osita Emmanuel. He is the founder and the president of Sub-Saharan Open University, Africa. He will be focusing on the promotion at local and the community level. Without further delay, Dr. Emmanuel, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Can you help with the presentation, or should I do it?
Yes, I am going to share your slides. It's already been ready, sir. Please.
Okay. Yes, my name is Osita. In America, I am the president of the Sub-Saharan Open University, and I'm very honored to be here today, Your Excellencies and Your Majesties. I want to specifically thank the Executive Director of the Center, Dr. Ado Kika, for this amazing opportunity. Can I go to the next slide, please? Now, the world is changing, and the Kaufman Foundation put that change in the hands of the youth. They're looking at the 21st century. They will rely increasingly on the lean and agile entrepreneurship of small, growth-oriented businesses rather than the resources of scale and market size of large corporations to fuel our economic growth through the creation of jobs and innovative goods and services. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, this is the agenda for the presentation, all through to closing. Next slide, please, so that we can beat time. Next slide. Okay, next slide, the preamble. Let's look at Africa. Now, this is Africa. Youth are the future of African growth. Today, more than half the population of the continent is under the age of 18. And so we have come together to decide that youth entrepreneurship in Africa is the best option by far for employment creation and wealth generation for the youth. Next, please. Okay, let's go. Now, what is the rationale for YIELD, the Youth Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Leadership Development Program? we are saying that competencies required for entrepreneurship are acquired through training and development. Economic development requires bringing forth latent talents by nurturing strong entrepreneurial spirit in the youth. And that the need for achievement motivates young people to exploit prospects and take advantage of these prospects. And that motivation comes through planned training activities. Next slide, please. Now, EDP programs, the entrepreneurial development programs, help potential entrepreneurs set up own enterprises appropriate to their abilities and choice. Entrepreneurial development is organized and a continuous process. That's what we do, organized and continuous. The basic purpose of these programs is to influence the youth and motivate them to make entrepreneurship their career. Next slide, please. And then YIELD is not just a training program, but a process of one, enhancing youth motivation, knowledge and skills, reforming the entrepreneurial behavior of their day-to-day activities, and also encouraging them to develop and sustain their ventures. Next slide, please. Now, what is the right of way? Next slide. Now, this is the genesis of the program. It was developed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, my home country. We had 6 centers nationwide in the regions located in a host state. We operated a standardized curriculum with diverse opportunities and unprecedented turnout. And then this also provided amazing prospects to the trainees. Next slide, please. Now, our program is demand-driven entrepreneurship education, DDEE. We are into anything under the sun: retail trade, artisanal craft, creative commerce, extractive industry, agriculture, agribusiness, agro-industry, aggregation, manufacturing, processing, milling, marketing, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. Our core objectives are 5. We are there to grow individual competence. We're empowering people, creating employment, generating wealth, and then making it possible for people to diversify their careers. Next slide. Our target, myriad, we go from all the way from secondary school graduates to next level of associate diplomates, the other national diploma and the national certificate of education. We take people who finished the bachelor's degree and have gone through the National Youth Service Corps. And also we admit the master's degree holders and up to the level of PhD. But our most interesting group is in engaged entrepreneurs. These are people who have been, become entrepreneurs, but do not have the wholesome competency to grow their trade to success. Next slide, please. So our strategy is to rethink entrepreneurship education. We are building alliances, leveraging resources nationwide, locally, and we're borrowing from local and global best practices to make sure that we give our young people the best. Next slide. Our strategy is to build blocks for youth success. What we're doing is providing pragmatic entrepreneurship education. We involve impeccable mindset modifiers. We have a portfolio of mentors, and we have established performance management plan because we need to be able to look at what we're doing and make it best, as we progress. But we're building partnerships both internally and externally. Next slide. Our program has dynamism and drive. Every program is not the same because every trainee is not the same. So we take this into consideration by making sure that we meet the demands of these young people. And then we identify and deploy program angels. When people come to our program, we use them as a mouthpiece for the program because this is what we want to achieve: a wholesome youth development for every young, male or female in the country. And because of our target, we go from the basic to the high-end modules, and then we'll focus on agripreneurship backed by relevant technology. Next slide, please. And then our program, we build core team with tenure, where people who started with us as long as 4 or 5 years ago are still there because we're building from the experiences. We sponge from the retinue of successful local models, match them with the global best practice modes, and then we'll flaunt our menu of dynamic courses. We're very proud of what we do. Next slide, please. Now, our success indicators, they are numerous, but what we do is to establish metrics for measuring them. First, we start with the number of participants who come in every quadrimester, the number of graduates who graduate from the program, because not everybody that comes in graduates. Then we profile the input of government, and then participants also evaluate the program. We also look at the number of our advisors and mentors, and then because it's an entrepreneurship program, we also look at the number of startups established after training. Next slide, please. What are our intentions? Next slide. Now, we are here to motivate young people to become job creators and not job seekers. This is our first mantra. We influence young people to take up entrepreneurship as careers. We enable them to acquire entrepreneurial qualities. We help them to identify and exploit business opportunities. And then we help them to analyze the viability of ideas and then supervise their business plan writing, because this is the first instrument towards getting their program funded. Next slide, please. We also train you to acquire technical and managerial skills. We help them to identify the pros and cons of entrepreneurship. We help them to understand startup procedures and link them with institutions on startup. We handhold them to financial institutions, this time the Central Bank of Nigeria. And then we bring development to the country through employment creation for the youth. Next slide, please. What's our approach? Next slide. Now, we provide lifelong learning. Our lifelong learning method is brilliant. We start from the basics, stage 1, and then we go to competency awareness. From there, we go on to the third stage of creative applications. From there, they launch their businesses as startups, and then from there, stage 5, to growth. What this does is that they can always come back to where they have issues with, reprogram themselves and continue. Lifelong learning model. They never stop learning. Next slide, please. Now we go through the talent pool for entrepreneurship. We start first of all from potential entrepreneurs. They are aspiring startups, young people, and then when they survive that, they go into the business owners pool, which includes lifestyle and restarts. But now they can become growth-oriented and become serial entrepreneurs and become growth companies when they now become full-fledged entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. We take them through the traits of entrepreneurs. We show them what it means to be an entrepreneur, from internal locus of control, high energy levels, self-confidence, tolerance for ambiguity, self-reliance and desire for independence, high need for achievement, flexibility, passion, and action orientation. These are the traits, known traits of successful entrepreneurs. We take them through all of this. Next slide, you see what happens though. We also address why entrepreneurs fail. So even after having addressed the traits, we also know that entrepreneurs fail for some reasons. And that includes, those reasons include lack of experience, insufficient commitment, bad or no failure, expertise, growing too fast, poor leadership, and poor financial control. So while we tell them what they do to become good entrepreneurs, we also warn them in advance that if they come into this bracket, their businesses will fail.
Convenience, but let's move further now. We are now moving to the very interesting part of this session, which is actually more focusing itself about our youth today. And we are more focusing, and as mentioned before, that the interesting part over here is actually we having a book ceremony, a book launching ceremony for this session, which is really, really important for the current generation, I must say, that could help them and of course lead them to get a great idea and to support regarding to the United Nations, of course. So without further delay, we are now moving to our book launch ceremony known as Get on Board, Dear Children of the World. So for that, I would like to request the presence of Miss Laura E. Flores, the Director of America's Division Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs and Peace Operations. She will going to put preview and give the message of the book on the world youth and children. Without further delay, may I request to Ms. Laura to please uh, your turn to speak on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fawad. Good afternoon from New York, children, young ladies and gentlemen, future excellencies. I hear some of the audience for this in the background of some of your audios. I am delighted and honored to give a preview of this wonderful book and its important message from the creativity and pen of His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Denis Antoine, my dear former colleague from Grenada. We had the privilege of representing our countries during this historic process of approval of the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, and the Universal 2030 Agenda. While representing his country at the United Nations, Dr. Denis Antoine was concurrent ambassador to the United States, to my country, Panama, to Mexico, and permanent representative to the Organization of American States, OAS, for Grenada. Prior to that, he served his country as ambassador to the People's Republic of China. During his time at the UN in New York, Ambassador Antoine served as vice president of the 69th session of the United Nations General Assembly when the 70th anniversary of this world body was celebrated. The year was 2015 when the General Assembly adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, with their 169 targets during a special summit at UN headquarters with the presence of heads of state and heads of government from the 193 member states of the United Nations. This experience and his passion for multilateralism led Dr. Antoine, Ambassador Antoine, to author the extraordinary children's book we are presenting today, Get on Board, Dear Children of the World. I think back to that time when the world adopted the 2030 Agenda in 2015. My son Max was 7 years old. If we had fast forwarded all primary school children to 2030, they would be the young professionals who would be in positions to judge whether we did our job well, and would also be responsible for making any adjustments and corrections. Children are in fact the guarantors of this process and will hold us accountable. I know my son will. Get on Board, Dear Children of the World is dedicated to the nearly 2 billion children whom we share this planet with and who are key players in the success of the 2030 Agenda. Using the power of visualization, Ambassador Antoine takes the children on a train journey around the globe, led by the Secretary General, into the year 2030 to experience the future we want, the future they are helping to shape through collaboration over competition, through enhanced solidarity. By 2030, poverty and hardship would have ceased. We would have attained peace. 2030 presents a sustainable world where people care for the environment. It is a world of no discrimination and equality. By making room for all the children of the world in the train, the book foretells the 2030 Agenda mantra of leaving no one behind. Beautifully written with a verse cadence, the message is one of empowerment of children, connecting to the individual responsibility we all have in the collective action. The simple, direct, and inclusive language speaks to children of all ages. Ambassador Antoine even managed to weave in the P3 permanent members of the UN Security Council into the story, as well as, of course, his beloved Caribbean region. The vivid drawings by Candace Paul underscore the universality of the message and the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals fulfillment. After such a wonderful geography tour, holding their respective flags, the children march off the train and re-enter the year 2020 inspired and hopeful about the future. Like the speeding train, we are in fact moving very fast towards that future in 2030. With only a decade left, we are now further challenged with the COVID-19 pandemic, which represents important setbacks to our development and peace gains, not to mention the millions of children that are out of school right now. So timely is Ambassador Antoine's message for children that he even managed to introduce the COVID-19 as well as the worldwide protest for racial justice into the book's rhyme. As we celebrate the UN's 75th anniversary this year, I think back to when my grandfather was a member of the first delegation of Panama to the United Nations, and how growing up, I wanted so much to be a part of this great organization. Get on Board, Dear Children of the World, invites us all to realize that we have agency and we can step up to contribute from our respective spaces and powers to this important journey in order to ensure the sustainability of our planet. Thank you, Dr. Antoine, and congratulations on this extraordinary contribution to such a critical stakeholder in the achievement of Agenda 2030. And happy International Day of Youth to all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Laura, for this great description and giving the preview of this amazing book, I must say. Allow me to introduce Ms. Sandra as a director of a group who will be launching this book. Ms. Sandra, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, everyone. Just wanted to check, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Sandra.
Absolutely, thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, and youth leaders of the world, it is a pleasure and honor to be here, celebrating the 2020 United Nations Day of Youth, and most especially the launch of Get On Board, Dear Children of the World, written by His Excellency, Ambassador Denis Antoine. Before I go forward, I'd like to give a brief intro into myself. I am an executive director at Dozy Group, an integrated downstream energy company and a leading player in the oil and gas industry of Nigeria. I lead the implementation of energy access projects with a focus on last mile distribution through modern energy solutions such as LPG. I must say that reading the Children of the World's book by Ambassador Denis Antoine brought back so many memories for me as a 23-year-old at the United Nations Secretariat working. And during my work experience at the United Nations, I was right at the peak of the 2030 agenda that was being introduced, particularly the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I was privileged to be mentored by Ambassador Denis Antoine at the time, who was able to paint to me a picture of what the future could look like. And particularly what drove the fire into my heart to really take ownership of the SDGs was how he visualized myself playing a strong role in 2030 and all the potentials and all the gifts that I had within me as an architect of solutions. And at this point, I'd like to read a part of the book that relates directly to this experience. In this part of the book, the Secretary General is talking to the students and telling them about how the world was radically different in 2030. And I read, "No one was too short or too big or too tall. We finally understood that there was great value in all. Those who were hungry now are fed. Those without shelter finally have beds. And those who were once refugees found safety and a place to call home. There were strong and vibrant communities and no one felt alone. Prolonged sickness was a thing of the past. Doctors discovered new vaccines and cures at last." And one boy asked the Secretary General, "This is all wonderful, but how did this all happen? What did we do?" And the General looked back at him and said, "My child, it all starts with you." And with a snap of the fingers, the children found themselves back where they started, year 2020, before the train departed. They stepped off the train and were surprised to see protests of racial justice and a frantic search for the cure of COVID. I quote, "What the world becomes is up to you. This is your future, and you decide what to do." I think as many of us here are probably aware of Joseph Campbell's writing when he speaks about the hero's journey. And for me, with this book, it really ushers children in to begin to visualize or step into what their hero's journey could look like. And it's very important to highlight the hero's journey because sometimes when you are faced with, dealing with the realities on ground, 2030 is different from 2020. And sometimes being able to have mentors around who can stir you on into really partaking in this journey of youth enterprise, youth leadership is really important. And as the speakers here have said, it's being able to serve as what capacity you find yourself in, with self-value, self-dignity, and being able to translate your vision of the world to reality. And that's what really makes a difference. We must all be able to dream beyond the confines of the problems surrounding us and breaking through glass ceilings. And at this point in time, I'd like to leave you with a quote that Ambassador Antoine always tells me. He says, "No one owns the sky, reach for it." And this is particularly important right now for the young people and even people who are mentors to young people. Reach for the sky. No one owns this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Laura, and thank you so much, Miss Sandra, for really having us on board. And of course, a big thanks to Ambassador Antoine for this amazing book, I must say. And that's what I just need to urge to everyone. Please let this have in your hand if you really want to take the train towards to the United Nations. And the details of the books are at the front of you. If you would like to order, I've already shared you plenty of links. You can get this book actually from everywhere: Amazon UK, Target, Barnes & Noble, Book Depository. I've just put down all the links into that, into the chat box. Of course, you can also email if you want to order a book, bulk, and I would say like more than 18 books, then please email to this given email ID. You can also email us on our email ID. We'll be definitely helping you out in order to get this amazing book, I must say. Once again, thank you so much, Miss Sandra, and to Miss Laura for having us and launching this book. And of course, a big thank to Ambassador Antoine for this amazing book. Thank you very much for that.
Just a quick word before we leave.
Please, Miss Sandra.
On behalf of my company, I will be donating 10,000 books to primary schools across Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We kindly request you, Ms. Sandra, if you could drop your email ID into the chat box so people can somehow send you the request. And of course, we will be requesting your details and throughout to all our participants and spreading this message or donating this amazing book into the Nigeria. Of course, we'll be helping you to do that, of course, as well. Ladies and gentlemen, so without further delay, let's move on to another part of this session. We are now moving into the input side, like input from the youth on global action. And for that, I would like to invite His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Devin Bannister, who is actually the Director General of Youth, Musical Cultural Affairs, Information Consulting Cabinets. He will be focusing into the youth, local, and global participation. Without further delay, Ambassador Dr. Devin, the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much. A pleasant good afternoon to each and every one of you. Just want to confirm, can everyone hear me clearly?
It's amazing, sir. We are really looking on that. Please carry on.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Let me say pleasant good afternoon to each and every one of you. Acknowledgement to all of the ambassadors, the Prince, all of the special invited guests, all of you prolific speakers. Thank you very much for coming together, that we can be able to acknowledge and recognize youths throughout the world today. You know, it's good to know that as youths, we have a time set aside whereby we can say, okay, this is Youth Day. They have Father's Day, they have Mother's Day. Well, here it is, we have Youth Day. So it's very good to say that we are also being recognized as well. The youths, the genetic maker for the continuation of any human species, the gatekeepers of ancestral legacy, the hope of the planet, the single most concentrated focus of any soberly constructive and progressive thinking mind. That's who I would summarize to say a youth is. While it has been oft classically and proverbially literally advanced throughout the ages that youth is our future by dint of existency, more realistic than it is figurative, that the emphasis given to futuristic thoughts has become narrowly drafted in the conditions of content as the repetitive cards of failure and wanton emptitude. Through the dark lens of myopia, have waxed more gravely a celebratory art form for many who have employed vehemently a reactive and rather antiquated formula with a gamesmanship approach with an intention to steer the wheel of development and advancement for a body of youth, those of the grain who have been divinely endowed with the giftedness and innate prediction towards revolutionary progress. Rather, for the evolution, exposure, harnessing, nurturing, marketing, deploying, and celebrating of resident genius. Most have been transported to the swamplands of an afterthought by those who have been the nominated, elected, and mandated ambassadors of universal prosperity. I would better say the catalyst in the universe matrix of transformative development. While it is that philosophy has over time stimulated the core interest of a great many of youths, global realities of atrocities has secured for them a less rewarding stream of assurance for their forward and upward mobility and for stability and prosperity. The plagues that can be categorically juxtaposed to a pandemic of sorts, those of abject poverty, desolation, hopelessness, moral injustice, deprivation, inter alia, the results of the naked manifestation of policy misalignment and misapplication of reason, justice, and equity to the non-conformity civil codes of excellence, the non-censorship of mass communicable content, have all vice gripped and incapacitated the will of the youths across continental boundaries. The formulation of an agenda with mainstream programs geared towards spontaneous activism is what is needed in the vertebrate of central visionary intelligence to curb and stymie the perpetual underlying and overlapping decadence and the disillusion of our most promising capital, which is the youth. In 1979 to 1980, the Chinese government, under the leadership of visionary extraordinary Deng Xiaoping, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, had embarked upon the implementation of a one-child policy, one that was initially visited by a fuselage of rejection and vitriol by both their domestic and extra-national counterparts. But 40 years after being lionized and polarized for the wizardry of vision pool, which saw a multi-cand of its youth of post-implementation era, enjoying manifold benefits compared to their international counterparts, Gascoms, who incessantly broadcast about investing in youth. The voice of effort, though silently disposed of, speaks louder than the voices which endangeringly and scholarly articulate impenetrably about a developmental agenda, but wanting for creative, applicable efforts. Though many are championing courageously in the fight against child labor and the sexual exploitation of youth, both vulnerable and sheltered, there remains inertia and an incomprehensive drive which is eclipsed by minute of focus with docile activism in an attempt to determine and address the factors which contribute to the social scourge, nesting symbolically to proliferate the blueprint of its nature. Though there has been the registration of an increased number of privately owned centers of learning, globally, there remains collectively an increasing number of youths who can ill afford the cost to pursue and access a proposed, directed, and genius extractive and nurturing education. While the earth enjoys the rise of many, a sports academy, a myriad of youth remains debarred from accessing those facilities. Though a global audience may enjoy glamorized theoretical products which target to showcase primarily the relentless drive handcuffed to chancery, to alone augment profits through the marketing of phenomenons, paragons and savants of the artistic orient, which after proves that there has scarcely been an emphasis upon the direct scouting for prodigious greatness within the townships of the improvised pools. While there has been a privatized economic insurgence to deploy financial resources towards philanthropy, there still remains an incalculable numbers youth who have not been the direct and immediate beneficiaries of those humanitarian driven courages. Though there has been the ambitiously well-intentioned private opening of medical agencies, there exists a startling upsurge of maladies which is statistically uncompromised with facts that many and underprivileged youth cannot and have not accessed to be in reasonable receipt of those very medical services. While it has media evidence that illegal lodging has been contributing to the knee crippling of economies, though there has been the demonstration of compliance by licensed facilitators with the embrace of ratified environmental laws, allowing for the legal dismantling of nature's lungs, which is the forest, there remain many youths who have never seen a desk and a table at which they can sit, transfer thoughts to reality in art. Though many bays and canals are evacuated for the unhindered passage of commercial vessels of the sea, there remains inaccessible many youths to a continual flow of portable water by way of wells and cisterns. It is a known fact that of the many democratically driven nation states, during the national elections contest and on campaigning platforms, youth are used in their political marketing exercise, but how many are elected to serve at the parliamentary and executive and administrative levels? How many? It is of the reactive nature of those with a psychological coding imbued with passivity and ultra dependency, particularly of those, the offended, courtier, and marginalized, the disadvantaged, the relegated, the disenfranchised, the polarized, to thunder voice their lamentations and criticisms against those of a vested commandering ilk, to whom they, the underprivileged, has ascribed godlike, more appropriately put, a dependency syndrome with cemented expectations that they, the powers that be, who must make for them a continual supply of manna. This, in essence, has encouraged laxity while discouraging proactivity of the will to create, proliferate, and extrapolate wealth. It is from this vantage point that the United Nations, as the one global force with the impetus of curtail disaster and to initiate and augment human development through its mandate, purely epitomized by its dynamic instrumentality to create a template for sustainable excellence, one marked and made indicative of a standard progressively gaining momentum of the substance of relevance. This, however, meaningfully, with untainted, undiluted, and undiminished focus set upon the Sustainable Development Goals, it is contextually sufficient for the UN functionaries and their active cronies to superimpose with straight line intent a strategic and decisive formula, one which shall act as the panacea of an ailing youth. Required a vintage, die-hard, sustainable commitment to encourage open flowing, meaningfully uninhibited cross-fertilization of talks with youth, irrespective of their conditions and presentations. The purposeful enduring of networking between and amongst youth within their sphere and further afield, which shall allow for an appreciation of each youth's individuality and uniqueness of generationally or ancestrally disseminated values and virtues, customs, norms, and folkways. This, I envision, shall lead towards the normalization of common and mutual respect, towards the alienation of age-old, ethnically or racially ingrained rancor, those dastardly viced by the moose of ignorance, understanding, and intolerance. This is a classically clinical approach channeled towards the tributary of improved human relations and undelusional of brother and sisterhood that shall further encourage the suffering of prosperity amongst nation states as youth who are known to be savvier with the instruments of technology, notably social media. With the purest focus in mind, will engage each other from the premise and position of global ambassadors of peace and goodwill. This I reference to Darla Davis, a Black musician who used the conference as a universal ingredient to currently engage Grand Knights of the Ku Klux Klan to have garnered fundamentally and understanding of their belief system and about their functional operational conduct as against a combative oppositionist approach which could have fueled an even exasperated enmity between the feuding racial sects, whites versus blacks. Davis' gentle, shrewd approach to meaningful engagements with the Ku Klux Klan's heads chiseled into effect a relationship that mirrored the intercourse between the sun and the seas, one of interdependence with regards to difference of purpose. As I advance the words of Sir Francis, who massaged so eloquently a reality into the hearts of the understanding that reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. Reading makes a full man, meditation a profound man, discourse a clear man, crystallizes quietness, the necessity for mutual, respectable engagement of minds, the empowering and enabling of social groups and their involvement as stakeholders with direct influence on the global populace is paramount in the enterprise of youth development and more intricately the commerce of relationships. Those schools, formal entities of learning, play a pivotal role in the charge towards structural education. It is even more critical that educational reform and the standardization of curricular become focal on the agenda of the UN. Sports as a social engine has a significant part to play in the uniting of peoples on any front. The culture and the art, science fairs, business, and all of these and all other avenues can be used to help to garnish a way in which youths can be able to be much more recognized and utilized to express their true potential. Let me say thank you very much to Dr. Ada for putting together this wonderful day to take the time to recognize the youths and give the youths the opportunity to let their voices be heard. And thank you very much to all of you speakers and colleagues for being here so that we can all come together to acknowledge and to push the youths of today that they of themselves can reach the correct heights. They can be able to go above and beyond and become somebody. Become that in which they were placed on earth to become. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Devon. It was really amazing speech, and of course, all those areas that I personally researched, especially that you have quoted that earlier one-child policy. It was really quite interesting case studies, and I personally researched on that area very much. Thank you so much for giving us a great honor, Dr. Devon. It was really an honor to have you on board. And ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward to another speaker for this evening now. And allow me to introduce to Ashley Hopkinson, the Youth Ambassador from Miss CARICOM Foundation International. Miss Ashley, the floor is yours now.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Ashley Hopkinson. I am the Youth Ambassador for CARICOM. First and foremost, I would like to thank all of those who are here to join us on this lovely day. And I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to be a voice for my youth. In a simple manner, life has a tendency of producing uncertain situations, hence COVID-19. The impact this virus has had and continues to have may impair individuals physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, and socially in their social health. Right now, we need all the strength we can muster, and during this time, it may be very difficult to find strength. For the past couple of months, America has been faced with an outbreak that no one realized would change our lives completely. Loved ones were lost, and many faced financial challenges, and many had to face being distant from their family members. For many of you who know, the coronavirus is a family of viruses that can cause illnesses such as the common cold, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, which results in many people losing their life. For the past couple of months, the world had to adjust their lives in order to protect not only themselves, but also their loved ones as well. Schools had to be shut down, as well as restaurants and other extracurricular activities. Citizens were put on curfew, as well as clothing stores, malls, etc. Many were not ready for the changes being made. By nature, I believe I'm a mentally strong young woman. However, this pandemic has made me question my own mental abilities. Anxiety, which is characterized by a normal response to stressors. However, when it's exaggerated, it can impair our functionings. I believe that my functioning has been impaired because things that were once normal to me, like sneezing, coughing, and sniffling, are in question. Am I sick? Do I have the virus? These are anxiety-producing questions, and I wonder, am I strong enough to deal with this? My mother is currently working at a nursing home as the administration's director. And because she is considered an essential staff, she has to be at work every single day. The thought of my mother going in and out of a building where individuals with compromised immune system reside is unsettling and anxiety-provoking. For example, my mother came home not feeling well on last Tuesday, and after speaking with her via FaceTime, I had an emotional breakdown. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing because the possibility of not having her around was the only thought running through my mind. Even as I'm saying this, it's thought-provoking. Also, working as a preschool teacher, I'm faced with the challenge every day to have my students understand that they're not allowed to play with the same toys as their other friends. I'm faced with the challenge of encouraging my students to have their mask on all day while they're in school, speaking with their friends. Another challenge that my students have to get used to is when they're feeling down and they're feeling sad. Normally my job is to comfort the child and hug them and show them the love that a teacher gives. But instead, I have to sit down and explain to them that I'm not allowed to give them hugs anymore. Now, for me, I'm a social butterfly. There's no doubt about that. And during this pandemic, my mother has thought it would be best for my sister and I to go to my aunt's house, who resides in South Jersey, where the number of cases are not as high. That meant I had to leave my mom, my stepdad, my dog, and my grandparents who I live with. I also have friends in the area that I can't hang out with anymore. The idea of gathering with my friends and family virtually has become an uncomfortable norm. Meeting with my peers at school has also been impacted, and the idea of not saying goodbye has been depressing because our last day was March 13th, 2020. Every young adult, preteen, etc., dreams about walking across their high school stage or football field.
Now they don't skip my time, so I have to wait for them to give me another time again. Yes.
Hello?
Hello, sir.
My apologize. Please carry on. I'm sorry, there was. Please carry on.
Okay. Every young adult, preteen, etc., dreams about walking across their high school stage or football field with their cap and gown awaiting to get their diploma. One of the happiest moments of their life. Now, the class of 2002 had their graduation, class of 2003 had theirs, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, the class of 2020 went through more than half of their school year, and when they finally got to their final lap, a huge obstacle came along. Classes were switched to online classes, human interaction in public was not allowed, and you had to begin to social distance. And also you had to become accustomed wearing masks and gloves at all times, even locking us down for many weeks just to keep everyone safe. And with many being on lockdown, graduation was not allowed due to the amount of people in the limited space. Due to those and many more rules and safety precautions, many high school and colleges had to cancel their graduation and proms, or everything was pushed forward due to the illness going around. But in this day and age, of course, the youth created a way to still have graduation, still have their prom. They decided if everything can't be in person, why not make it virtual? So that many people can still have that conversation and socialization that they need. Hopefully in the future, everything will eventually show the light at the end of the tunnel. If we continue to wear our masks and gloves, a lot of the virus will not be contracted. Throughout this experience, I'm gaining some strength. Now, my aunt, who is a therapist, has been teaching me what it is to be mentally strong, how to cope with anxiety, and what it means to spend quality time with each other. The quote, "We are all in this together," reminds me that I have to do my part, not only in social distancing, but I have to do my part in helping others realize if we keep a positive attitude, it will help this journey of quarantine, isolation, and social distancing easier. I'm reminded of the hashtag stay safe, and I'm doing my part mentally, socially, physically, and financially. Once again, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be the voice of the youth.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing great views, of course, and as a youth advocate and as a part, of course, and bringing the voice and all those major issues that itself youth is facing. Thank you so much for giving us a moment of that. Next, ladies and gentlemen, now we are recording again to Mr. Minimun Simikumu. Apologize for the pronunciation if it's wrong. Without further delay, sir, the floor is yours now. Please, you can proceed and allow me to share your presentation as well.
All right. Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Very well, sir. Please.
Good evening. Thank you. May I use this opportunity to thank the Center for SDGs Global Education USA, CICA International University, and other noted partners on the invitation to speak on this auspicious United Nations International Youth Day today, 12 August 2020, via the visual Zoom webinar. May I also say that I represent the Great Gregory University, Utru, Abia State, Nigeria as an institution. Nigeria and indeed Africa is happy to be associated with the by the UN at 75 in all its mandates and facets. Permit me to say that the UN 75 foresees the future and understand the fact that young people are central and remain the epicenter of our existence as a people. You know, we've realized that the United Nations has done considerable investment in the lives of young people in our world over the years. Now, youth, as defined broadly by the African Union, consists of persons aged from 15 to 35, while the UN define youth as persons consisting from the age of 15 to 24. You know, Africa as a continent has the 10 countries in the world with the biggest youth population. You know, youth in Africa constitutes over 75% of Africa's 1.2 billion inhabitants. The imports of this suggests that the development outcome of Africa's young people have a significant effect on the continent's parts. You know, if they are productively engaged, it's going to affect the continent positively, and if they are not, they are going to constitute a form of social instability. You know, our world recognizes the centrality of youth in achieving the aspirations of Africa Union's Agenda 2063 and the UN Agenda 2030. You know, the agenda envisioned a continent with people-driven development relying on the youth. The African youth demonstrate great resilience in all ramifications. They are more optimistic about business opportunities and are less afraid of their businesses failing than anyone else in the world. You know, emerging democracies, in emerging democracies, youths are politically being active and have helped to strengthen democratic institutions. You know, in several countries in Africa, like Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Senegal, etc. You know, the high rate of unemployment has affected political participation and youth inclusiveness. You know, participation in electoral process in Africa is costly, even as a voter or as a candidate. You know, to actually participate politically and affect the scheme of things is quite expensive, and that has in a way discouraged many young people from participating in the process of decision making. You know, more worrisome is the unemployment index, among other interlinking factors that have engineered insecurity, conflict, violent extremism, across the continent. No, in sub-Saharan Africa, where according to World Bank data, the average youth unemployment rate over the past decade is at 17.2%, which is greater than the global average of 13.1% in 2016. You know, sustaining the UN 2030 development agenda is already threatened. You know, the challenges Africa faces in education, employment, health, and governance are acutely felt by the youth, the young people. You know, like the speaker before me asked, youths are used for political marketing, but they are never carried along in the process of decision making. But in all of these, you know, to save our time, what is the way forward? You know, by 2030, it is predicted that the number of youths in Africa will have been increased by 42%. You know, this, some believe, with good governance could significantly benefit and develop others who have had this would believe could benefit, while others argue that a large poorly managed population may lead to greater instability and civil conflict. In view of the above, the following have been suggested towards meeting the UN 2030 and AU 2063 agenda. Number one, direct opportunities in the area of education, employment, entrepreneurship, and engagement should be created for the African youth. Secondly, African youths are diverse in realities, that they are gifted with natural skill. These must be explored to get them engaged to regional actions aimed at meeting the agenda of the United Nations and the African Union. Then again, young people, by virtue of their energy, have the ability of creating new solutions to old problems. This places a call on the United Nations to, through bilateral or multilateral approach, encourage governments of African states to leverage this natural affinity through youth capacity building. Then again, entrepreneurship, you know, should also be encouraged. Like in my institution, you know, before you leave there as a graduate, there are opportunities created for you to acquire at least two entrepreneurial skills, which will help in your personal development and also reliance on the nation building. So, and then again, where the free education must be pursued with vigor by member states. You know, the United Nations should, pursue this recommendation with unrelenting attitudes. You know, in conclusion, I say that African youths are ready and are willing to be engaged from grassroots in the quest to meet the 2030 and 2063 agenda of the United Nations and AU respectively. On this United Nations Day of Youth, we call on African leaders to give the youth the opportunity to be engaged from grassroots to regional action. Let our capabilities as young Africans allow us to be part of the future that we want for ourselves. According to, I think I close by quoting Ban Ki-moon, the former US Secretary General, that failure to invest on the youth is a false economy. So on that note, I encourage African leaders to inculcate the young people in the process of decision making and let them be active participants. Let them not just be marketing, let them not just be marketed politically, but let them also be, you know, elected into positions of active decision making. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and also thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really an honor and of course really nice to hearing some different diversified aspect from your side. Thank you so much for giving us a great honor. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we are moving into the last areas, and, or I can say the aspect of this particular session. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Bill Graham once again, who is actually the Vice Chair and the NG Committee for Education, Learning and Literacy at the United Nations. He will be more focusing into the roadmap for engagement of youth in the next 10 years of 2030 agenda, the youth perspective. Mr. Bill will now moderate from now onwards. So over to you, Mr. Bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen here.
Yes, you are allowed to do that, Bill. Can you do that easily?
Okay. Whoop.
Yes, we can see that you are sharing it now.
Okay. And the reason we are doing this, we pre-recorded this here, is our panelists come from Kampala, Accra, and Beirut, Lebanon, in addition to Portugal. And as we are aware, in Beirut here, there are issues with electricity, in Kampala with connectivity. So to avoid that problem, we have pre-recorded this panel session. So with nothing further, I'm going to go ahead and start the discussion here that we did live this morning. Good morning. I'm Bill Graham. I'm the Vice Chair of the NGO Committee for Education, Learning and Literacy at the UN and the President of the Rotary Dare to be Great Global E-Club. I'm also a representative to the UN for the Italian Diplomatic Academy and the Young Global Leadership Foundation. It's my honor to moderate this session this afternoon on mobilizing and empowering youth to effectively take on the SDGs worldwide. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our panel. Mariam Nassif from Beirut, Lebanon, who has participated in leadership and organizational roles in several large-scale global conferences, including here at the UN, involving thousands of exceptional young people from around the world. Leah Magalhães, a high school student from Portugal, who has participated in world conferences seeking solution ideas to major world problems. Henry Nisamba is an author, and he's the CEO of an NGO helping disadvantaged young adults get on track for a more successful life in Kampala, Uganda, and the winner of the 2019 Billion Acts Hero Award from Peace Jam, an association of Nobel Peace Prize winners. Emmanuel Amatepe, convener of the annual African Youth SDG Summit, bringing thousands of African youth leaders together to explore how to best achieve the SDGs in Africa. He was a finalist for a 2018 SDG Action Award and is a UNDP 16 by 16 Global Youth Leader. Thanks to all of you for participating today. What sets this panel apart from many others on this topic is that these young people actually believe youth can significantly bring about the achievement of many of the SDGs by 2030. Let's see how they think they can do this. At this point, most moderators would typically begin with a statement that sets the stage for the rest of the discussion. However, there's someone who has said this better than I ever could.
We are in trouble. My generation has failed, so we count on you. Your generation needs to go back to that.
Well, there you have it. In fairness, these are just some select comments taken out of context, but they reflect the gist of what the Secretary General repeated several times during his talk. He basically said that his and my generation is not on track to solve problems that need to be solved, and it's therefore now up to your generation to solve them before it's too late. We're counting on you. Basically, our generation is not going to solve the problems that could be existential for your generation. So they're now your problems. Congratulations. Leah, you are the youngest on this panel. What's your reaction to the idea that my generation is basically saying to your generation, sorry about that, now you need to fix it?
Hello, everyone. Personally, putting it like that, it is something that brings a lot of pressure to the younger generations. And I guess the big question is, what does this mean? I guess the best way of putting it is taking President Kennedy's statement, we don't know how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna do it anyways, and adapt it to we don't know how we're gonna do it, but we have to do it anyways.
Thank you, Leah. Well, I guess that's a responsible answer to a seemingly unfair situation. In that same speech, the Secretary General said that scientists have warned us to not allow global warming to increase by more than 1.5 degrees by the end of this century. But he also said we're unfortunately on track to see an increase of 3.3 degrees, which he said would be catastrophic. Yet we see governments continually pushing back the date by which they would achieve climate change goals. SDG 10 calls for reduced inequalities, but is anyone even defining what level of inequality is acceptable? Emmanuel, to what degree is the failure to do what is needed to achieve the SDGs due to lack of political will to commit to doing what is needed, or in some cases to even define interim goals that would have us on track to make the achievement of the goals even possible?
Thank you very much. This is very true. It appears governments and NGOs and others set goals based on what they think they can do and not what is needed. Most people have a big fear of failure, but we can't afford to risk our future on people's egos or political fears. It is as simple as this. You can't hit what you don't aim at. We need to set our goals not on what we think we can do, but rather on what is needed. It is only when we stretch to do something we don't know how to do that we grow. We have to set goals based on what is needed and then do all we can to find ways of achieving them. Only then we have a fighting chance of achieving what is really needed. Fooling ourselves by reducing the goals to what we think we can achieve, even when that is not what is needed, is not helping us. Like Angelo said, the problem with those people is not what they set goals too high and fail, but that they set goals too low and succeed. We will set goals based on what is needed, so we at least have a fighting chance of achieving them.
Most of the key SDGs cannot be sustainably achieved unless there's a significant closing of the economic gaps between developing and developed countries. It's inconceivable that a country with only 1/10 the per capita income of developed countries will have the resources to sustainably eliminate hunger and poverty and provide reasonable levels of healthcare, education, clean water, affordable clean energy, transportation, infrastructure, etc. I don't see anyone with plans that include milestone goals that would lead to a significant closing of the economic gap between developing and developed countries by 2030. Miriam, what are your thoughts on what could be done to significantly close the economic gaps between developing and developed countries by 2030?
That's a very interesting question. Thank you. You know, we've already said that most people, and especially politicians, they fear failure. And they fear setting goals that they don't believe they have achievable plans for. And there are very, very few leaders that go on a limb. And just like Leah mentioned earlier, US President John F. Kennedy, he inspired an entire nation just minutes after a simple statement, which is, we don't know yet how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it anyway. And it's about putting a man on the moon in 10 years. So he had a vision and he was gonna do it. And like we said, the number one thing is that we need a goal and we need to define that goal. But right now, that goal is to find ways to accomplish all of the other goals. And that means that we have to state the actual goals that are needed and then state the sub-goals to find ways in which we can achieve the needed results. It's very cyclic and it's all over the place, but that's what we need. I'm gonna go even further and ask you to remember the words of Nobel Peace Prize winner and the former president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The size of your dreams should always exceed your current capacity to achieve them. And like we said previously, it's only when we strive to reach beyond what we know how to do, that is when we grow. And that's, I think, what will inspire and mobilize our people, and the youth in particular, to focus on the real goal of the movement in the moment. And that is to come up with bigger, better, and greater ideas to solve the biggest problems of our time. And that's much, much better than just announcing solutions that don't achieve what's needed, but it reduces the drive to reach the better solutions.
Okay, we need countries, NGOs, and others to set meaningful goals that have a chance of achieving the needed end results. We get that. There are lots of projects underway to improve infrastructure, et cetera, in many developing countries. But at the same time, the bulk of the populations in many of those countries and significant parts of the populations of developed countries have been and are being significantly left behind. Not too long ago, the Brookings Institute issued a report where they estimated that with current approaches and efforts, it would take more than 100 years for education outcomes in developing countries and disadvantaged communities within countries to catch up with developed countries and privileged communities. Henry, can countries and communities where there are huge gaps in education outcomes hope to close the economic gaps to developed countries and communities within the next 10 years?
No, for most countries and communities, economic well-being is dependent on having a population able to offer competitive service to the rest of the world. The ability to offer competitive services is dependent on a population that is able to offer competitive levels of productivity. That in turn is dependent on the bulk of the population having competitive world-class skills and knowledge. Many developing countries point with pride at the level of education that the wealthiest segments of their population are receiving. And they point out that the rest of their population is making progress, even if they are still far from being world-class competitive. But what happens when 15 or so percentage of the population gets world-class education, but the remainder of the population is far behind in education outcomes? The result is that 80% not getting a competitive education cannot command an income high enough to afford to compete to pay for the services of the 20% with the great educations. The result is that many of those with better educations relocate to places that can afford to pay for their services. This is why the former African Union ambassador to the US said that there are more doctors from Ghana in New York City than all of Ghana. So the only viable solution is quickly raise the education outcomes for the entire population of developing countries to world-class levels. That is what is needed call, regardless of what we think we can do.
We've said that most people will not act unless they have a compelling goal that they want to see achieved, and also that they can clearly see a path they believe can get them there. You've clarified where you're trying to get to, but people have believed that's where we need to get to for decades. Manuel, is there any believable plan for how developing countries and disadvantaged communities can significantly close that education gap in just 10 years?
It starts with getting everyone to accept the fact that the real goal is to close the gap for all people within just a few years. Then we have to get people to believe it is possible. There are countries that not too long ago were poorer than some currently developing countries like Ghana and Nigeria that have literacy rates worse than many current developing countries that are not world leaders in education outcome. For example, South Korea, China, and Singapore. So we can say it can be done. And we see that top education outcomes have contributed to those countries becoming innovation leaders in many fields, which has helped fuel their economic success. For example, at the time of independence in 1960, Ghana had a higher per capita income than South Korea. South Korea invested heavily in education. In a little more than one generation, they quadrupled literacy rate from 22% to 87%. And today, they have one of the highest tertiary education rates in the world. In 2018, South Korea's per capita income was almost 9 times higher than that of Ghana. Please note that we are not picking on Ghana as an example of the West developing countries. In fact, Ghana is one of the most successful countries in Sub-Saharan Africa with regards to education. But this just emphasizes the scope of the challenge we face.
So we see that some of the recently most successful countries with regard to economic growth are the same countries that have been doing the best in educating the bulk of their populations. But you still haven't shown there's a believable path to closing the education gap in developing countries and disadvantaged communities in the next 10 years. Miriam, do you want to say something about how these gaps could be significantly closed in the next 10 years?
Yeah, definitely. Just going back to the question that I answered earlier regarding closing the gaps and how we should define the sub-goals for these gaps, and I think this is where I'm going to go with this answer. With regards to education, there are a number of factors that differentiate countries with lower education outcomes and countries with the best education outcomes. And some of these gaps are the education resources and facilities, the expectations with regard to level of education young people should and will receive, and the hours and fervor of the bulk of the population are putting into learning. And these three are very important. Now, with the exception of some higher level technical subjects, we believe that expectations and the hours and fervor put into learning are of greater importance than education resource and facilities. We should also note that the most successful countries with regards to education outcomes did not begin with superior educational resources and facilities, but with getting the young people to strive for a great and a better education. In recent decades, the education community has been uniting around the idea that what learners do in the learning process is of far greater importance than what teachers do, aside, of course, teachers motivating students to learn. We believe that the greatest need in closing the education gap is to get learners to become competitive world-class strivers, aiming for and expecting to achieve a world-class education and settling for nothing less. What would the typical developing country look like in a few years if every young person were a fervent learner, completely dedicated to getting a competitive world-class education? What would happen if they were completely dedicated to becoming a world-class engineer, scientist, entrepreneur, electrician, plumber, or nurse? Regardless of what profession they are aiming for, our strategy is to get every young person to become a competitive striver to get a world-class education that includes mastery of key 21st century skills, ideally with a global citizen mindset. And that's our what's needed goal with regards to education.
Wow, that's a very clear sub-goal. But how do you propose to achieve it? Leah, what are your thoughts on this?
First, we should always be striving to improve our strategies and plans for achieving the goals. The how is flexible, but the goals are not. Having said that, we've identified a number of initiatives aimed at motivating and mobilizing large shares of the world youth population. We have literacy initiatives with great incentives aimed at getting tens and perhaps hundreds of millions participating in reading campaigns. We have initiatives aimed at closing gaps related to mastery of key foundation skills such as maths by age 10 in underperforming communities and countries. We have initiatives aimed at getting tens of millions of young people participating in activities that will earn them the honor of being declared global citizen heroes for having dramatically changed the lives of millions of the world's poorest children. We have initiatives to influence the music industry to have songs about Vision 2030, the world that could be if all the SDGs were accomplished, the most listened to songs in the world. We have initiatives to get very large numbers of secondary and post-secondary students striving to master key 21st century skills so that they can earn great honors for contributions to significantly bettering the world. All of these initiatives have a few things in common. They are all aimed at mobilizing the masses. They're all aimed at getting young people to develop key 21st century skills and, above all, confidence in their ability to make truly significant difference. They're all aimed at getting young people to strive to make the world a better place. And they're aimed at getting young people to set goals based on what is needed and not what they think that they can do or what is possible. And they're aimed at getting young people to see failure as just a stepping stone on the way to improvement and ultimate success.
Great strategy, but what makes you think you can do it, especially the part about mobilizing the world student body? Henry?
As far as mass influencing people, we agree this isn't what most NGOs and others do. While most NGOs are focused on the delivery of services or what they do, we are focused on influencing the masses to bring about desired changes in both attitudes and results by getting the masses to make the needed changes, because we recognize that many of the world's problems are actually related to people's behavior. We have a saying, some people use their hands to help a few, others mobilize others to help very many. There are many hundreds of thousands of local efforts taking place around the world to bring improvement, and many of them are successful. Why then do we see so little movement in the aggregate global needle with regard to many of the SDGs? The head of the OECD, this assessment reported last year that there had been no significant improvement in the global education outcomes in the past 10 years. The bottom line is that if everyone would just do their share, mindset have largely failed to bring about the accumulative global improvement we need. Grassroots don't work because they fail even when they succeed, because the goals are too low. Goals are generally local. No one has the global end results as their goal. We have to learn to think less like sergeants and more like generals. It is not about who wins the most battles. It is about who wins the war. When it comes to influencing the masses, we have to remember there are people who do this every day, like the marketing executives of Nike, McDonald's. Effective action will require coordinated economies of scale. Do locally what can best be done locally. Do centrally all that can best be done on centrally.
I'd like to take a moment to build on that. Einstein supposedly said doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, is a definition of insanity. And what I'd like to say is wanting something to happen or someone to do something and not planning to cause it to happen is the definition of wishful thinking. So let's avoid wishful thinking. Remember, we don't have to know all the answers. We only have to be committed to doing it anyway. And we have to be committed to not let failure or any other obstacle deter us. As was repeated among multiple Nobel Peace laureates, we never fail, we just learn and improve. Or as others have said, it's not how often you get knocked down that counts, it's how often you get back up. Never forget, the only thing that's truly impossible is that which is not attempted.
Thank you. Great, great words. Those are some inspiring comments. I believe you actually have a formula that could result in widespread engagement of the masses and bring about massive change in the world. Anything else you would like to say to the audience?
I would like to add that we need the best and most passionate brains working on developing and continually improving the best ideas for solving major world problems. Thank you.
You have to believe, and as we said, you can't achieve what you don't aim for.
And also, there is little value in aiming for and achieving goals that don't achieve what is really needed.
But most importantly, if you believe you can bring the needed change and would like to be a part of making it happen, please join us.
If you'd like to know more, please contact us at the address on your screen. Dare to be great. Thank you. Okay. That is basically our presentation. I hope you found some inspiration in that. Those young people, as I mentioned, from around the country, or around the world, pardon me, and we are looking here to literally mobilize very large numbers of young people in every country around the world, who in turn will help implement local solutions that will hopefully engage the tens and perhaps hundreds of millions. Because if we do not get the hundreds of millions engaged, we will help some people, but we will not change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That was really awesome discussion. I mean, that's quite inspiring, and it was a really amazing idea that you gather from different diversified youth and put into one topic area, and then you put into that. And that was really amazing. Really appreciate, Bill, that how you lead that discussion and put forward some really amazing solution, especially if we are pertaining to the international youth. That's awesome. Great. Right on top, Bill. Really appreciate that, mate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward. Not long, by the way. I know it's quite late. Everyone is starting tidying up, but don't worry. We have plenty of things to do, and of course there are plenty of things that sort of a benefit, and of course some sort of a secret that we somehow prepare for you guys. So nevertheless, I'm not taking much time of you, and allow me to introduce our another speaker for this evening. It's Azuki Su. He is the president of Legendary Milestone Education. Mr. Su, without further delay, the floor is yours now. Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, I'm in New York now. So basically, we are education company. We help the young generation from the different country to learn how to do the scientific research and how to help them to write the research paper. Yeah. We also, today we live in a world with different culture, also ethnic groups, different skin colors, religions, and social systems. And the people of various countries have become members of an intimate community of shared destination. So in the face of natural calamities and man-made misfortunes, so young people should give full play to their dedication to mankind's destiny. So result the social, economic, and the status quo, and make the world more brilliant and beautiful. So today I will elaborate on the theme from several different aspects. Which, what is young engagement? Why young people should participate in global action, and how to make good use of young leadership to participate in global governance. So anybody has any question for me? Okay, first, the process of young participation actually is a process of young development. This process helps young people to gain correct guide through communication and interaction through the society. So in action, educations, communications, service, and should be done to raise the level of the young political participation. Young talents should use their own talents to participate in global governance, call on their peers and friends to pay more attention to social events, and actively contribute to the future international development strategy. Harmonious, stable, and peaceful international environment is a blessing of our next generation. And the young generation should actively maintain the circumstance for a long time. Secondly, why? Under the current background, the participate. I'm sorry, yeah. Under the current background and governance framework, it's possible for youngs to participate in global governance through a combination of participation issues, diversification of participants, and institutionalization of participation process. Paying attention to the dimension of governance is a basic orientation of young participation in global governance. So the effectiveness of young talents' participation in global governance is inseparably from the construction of effective process mechanism, which is closely related to the internationalization training strategy of youngs. So young's participation in global governance is characterized by the imitation of participation mechanism and the infinity of innovation idea. So young talents' participation in international governance can strengthen their sense of mission and responsibility, and understand the true meaning of the community of shared future of mankind. So that's why I believe that young talents have a great dream in their hearts. Our hearts are tied to the earth, this amazing land. We hope that the earth will become better, and we are happy with every little progress. Our voice is so small, but it's so grand because of the gathering of people. Also, finally, how as teenagers who actively participate in international governance, we should do our bit to maintain world peace. Maybe it's impossible for a person to decide the world's major events, but if the youngs all over the world participate in international governance, our world will become better and the world will be more colorful because of the difference between us. Facing growing global challenges, the international community should strengthen coordination and cooperation, establish a fair, equivalent, flexible, and effective system of global governance, properly address various global issues, and promote the common well-being of mankind. I hope we young generation can contribute more to global governance and peace in the future. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you so much, Suketsu, for your great words, of course. And indeed, it was really a pleasure to have you with us for this evening. Thank you very much for giving us a great time. And definitely we'll look forward to having a good collaboration in future. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's move forward. Now it's time for calling up the action. I would say, or could be calling the action on the 2020 UN Day of Youth. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Ms. Farida Ali Adamu. She is the founder of Billion Doors Initiative UK. She's going to emphasizing and of course enlightening on the area of call to action with respect to engagement of youth agenda. Without further delay, Ms. Farida, the floor is yours now.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Farida Ali Adamu, and I am the chairperson of a Billion Doors Initiative. I am also a board member at ActionAid. I'm a lecturer of ACCA and a government auditor. Most of all, I'm a very passionate youth advocate. On behalf of a Billion Doors Initiative, I would like to appreciate all distinguished speakers that came before me for their amazing contributions. Thank you. A call to action, engagement of youth for global action. Next slide. So I would like to begin by briefly introducing what my NGO does. We are a youth-based, non-governmental organization with members from diverse professional backgrounds. We are advocates of good governance, social justice, and equality. Our mission is to provide humanity with access to appropriate equal opportunities in health, education, employment, or trade. Our vision is to become the first generation to end extreme poverty and the most determined generation in history to end tribalism and corruption, and the last generation to be threatened by poor education, insufficient health, unequal opportunities, and poor standard of living. I would like to acknowledge a call to action initiative by Center for SDG Global Education USA. It is indeed a laudable initiative. A call to action is a significant factor of the SDG 2030 agenda. Engaging the youth is creating channels to global sustainability. It is a pathway to enable the world achieve the 2030 agenda in the next 20 years. Next slide, please. Engagement of youth and the 2030 agenda. You see, time is of essence. 5 years gone already, and 10 years to actualization of 2030 agenda. The youth seem not to have a clear schedule for the 2030 agenda. Looking at this agenda, the youth need to be fully engaged by having a clear schedule to achieve this. They need a defined role to play. This way they can inherit and continue the work already started. However, parental norms, family values, and today's youth on global trend. There seem to be apparent youth unnecessary rivalry. And this is mainly due to a generation mismatch. What I mean by a generation mismatch is that in a fast evolving world, coupled with and surrounded by technological advancement and the social media, the youth mindset and that of parents are incorrelated. For example, a parent wanting A and then the youth wanting B. And when the youth cannot get what they want, they become miserable and begin to hoard negativity. A negative mindset cannot achieve much. Also, there is extreme disharmony between data on world youth. As a result, engaging them to the development goals require a clearer picture about the world youth. If we don't know the numbers of the youth, how do we fully engage them? Data collection through registration. gender and religious issues impact the youth negatively. Gender and religious issues are mainly the issue of orientation. Religious issues and gender inequality amongst the youth has led to a subjective mindset that can potentially slow down the realization of the SDG. Bearing in mind that some religious norms and culture contribute to inequality and subordinate the role of women. Ending discrimination is a human right and a critical issue for a sustainable future. Solution. What is the solution? First, to strengthen youth's identity towards a positive direction. This involves reorientation of the minds of the youth that is derailing them from their intended life goals and dreams. For example, in many parts of the world, the youths are used as political thugs, campaigners, or at most, political aides. When they're used as political aides, you see, this is a role that really has no future, because as soon as their principal retires, their dreams follow suit. They become demoralized, and a negative syndrome is installed in their mind, and they become a liability to the society and themselves. Therefore, their minds need to be channeled towards positivity, generally. Engaging them to envision themselves as instruments for global action through global actioneer communities. From the grassroots, the youths should be strengthened to identify themselves. The global actioneer community will serve as a bedrock that will enable them realize their value beyond instruments of violence or political campaigns. Also, stepping up Youth for Development agenda through 4E engagement pathway. Permit me to explain this in the next slide. Also, sorry, go back. I'm not done. Enacting global action through Youth Together for Development agenda. This is creating a movement of engagement through campaigns, awareness, and youth for youth exchange programs, which involves information sharing via social media and mainstream media, where they can dialogue and learn from each other. Also, mentoring and orientation workshops and seminars that will gear their minds towards positivity and bring them on board the SDG agenda. Springing up youth role models that act as positive instruments of change. You see, the youth can easily relate to their own kind. So if we have role models that are youths, it's a lot easier for other youth to reckon with. Okay, so explaining the 4E engagement pathway. Entrepreneurship. Here we help the youth develop their inherent skills. For example, a doctor or a lawyer may have inherent skills of graphic design, public speaking. They should be empowered to develop these skills. And if after school a job doesn't come, they can easily start a business. Exchange programs. This involves socializing, traveling, where they can exchange ideas. You see, international interactions and knowledge propels the youth towards understanding of an array of different cultural and community perspectives. That is why it's important for the youth to travel and interact with other youths. Also, youth for youth programs that involve mentoring. For example, you can have a youth that could be depressed, and this could be due to many, many factors, maybe from home, from school, from anything. So from the Youth Together initiative, we can send a delegate, a representative, to ensure the youth is back on track. Because with a depressed youth, they can't achieve anything. Empowerment. This is where the skill acquisition program comes in. We would empower them with skills, such as technical skills, vocational skills, and also with startup kits. This will help them to create wealth, and this will make them productive in their societies. Education. This involves putting them on a path of learning, that is, engaging them on a lifetime learning channel. The youth should be channeled towards acquiring useful knowledge that will help to build sustainable, inclusive, and resilient societies. In conclusion, it is my profound honor to flag the global campaign of a Billion Doors initiative and the Center for SDG Global Education USA and Youth Together for Development Agenda as a movement of action in engaging world youth for the 2030 Agenda from grassroots. Time is running on us, and the time is now for repositioning the world's youth. I would also like to use the opportunity to kindly request for 50 books for youth as a kickoff for Youth Together initiative. Thank you.